So why is this Freelander with the BMW M47 diesel engine all smoky, it's not running right? Well, through these videos we're going to investigate. So I already know that we've got a problem with oil that seems to be coming out of the turbo. Sometimes this can be caused by a blocked crankcase breather filter, which is located behind here. It's a bit of a common fault on these BMW engines. Possibly the oil seals in the turbo have gone, but let's hope not. And we'll go through the process of trying to diagnose where the oil is coming from, but also trying to diagnose why the engine isn't running right. So it's not revving beyond about 2,500 revs. When the MAF sensor is removed, it runs a little bit better in terms of picking up the power, which implies the MAF sensor has gone wrong. It's the original Bosch design, which isn't particularly reliable either. And there is a better and more reliable Pierberg one that they use in Mercedes, and there's a kit to replace that. Also, you can get it with a tuning box to add another 40 horsepower or so. The details of which are shown in this video on my channel. So first of all, what I'm going to do to eliminate some of the easy causes is give it a good filter change. So the air filter and the crankcase breather filter, I'm going to change it to the upgraded oil separator instead, which means that won't need changing in the future. Doesn't clog, and each step we'll see if it makes any difference to the running of the engine. So some of the things we'll start going through after that is looking perhaps at the injectors, maybe looking at the low pressure fuel pump, try and decide if the turbo is any good, if it's leaking a lot of oil or not. Certainly there is a bit of an oil problem because when I disconnect this pipe, which is the output of the intercooler, so just to refresh where the air goes, it comes in here, over here, goes through this sort of plastic moulding, goes into this box which is the air filter, goes through the mass airflow sensor, comes out of there, goes to the turbo which is behind the engine, not a great position if you want to change it or work on it. Comes down here, comes down here, through into the intercooler which is at the front, back out of the intercooler here, in through a temperature sensor, through the second part of this moulding, through the EGR valve, or in this case an EGR bypass replacement, and then into the engine. So the fact that oil is coming out here probably means that it's been pushed out of the engine, or the turbo is leaking oil and the oil seals have gone. Now oil can be pushed out of the turbo through the oil seals, apparently, so I read, by the crankcase breather filter being blocked, which is in here. So let's go on and do that, which is detailed in this video on my channel. So with the crankcase breather filter replaced, we need to see whether that makes any difference to the oil coming out of the turbo. So we can run the engine in this configuration. It's not going to have any turbo boost because we haven't got the pipe coming out of the intercooler connected to the engine inlet. But the turbo will still be blowing, and what I'm going to do now is I think disconnect the turbo output pipe from here and tilt it up somewhere, maybe put it in a cardboard box or something so that it captures any oil splutter, and see how much oil is actually blasting out of the turbo now. What I've hooked up here is the turbo output pipe, and I've just got it going into a few rags in a cardboard box just to capture any of the oil that's been thrown out. It was very oily previously. The reason I've disconnected it here is obviously the intercooler is going to be full up with oil, and you can see, there you go, the intercooler inlet pipe is indeed quite oily. The whole intercooler is going to need washing out. Not a huge amount of oil now coming out of it, whereas previously it was splattering everywhere. I'm going to start the car, it's going to be a bit noisy, rev it up, and hopefully you can see that. Run it a little bit and pushed out a bit of oil, but then it started getting better and better. So I don't believe there's a huge amount, if any, oil coming out of the turbocharger now. So hopefully that's saved me getting a new turbo, and changing that crankcase ventilation filter has actually solved the problem. The thing we should do is to clean these rubber hoses The rubber doesn't like oil, it basically softens it up. Just to test that our intercooler is clean of oil, we can do what we did before, which is to run the engine with this pipe off. Before it was splattering oil coming out. Now the box is clean and there's no oil splattering out anymore. Not one drop, in fact. So we can eliminate oil from the turbo as a cause of smoke coming out the back. We still have, however, smoke coming out the back and poor running. So we have to move on to look at the next possible cause. As a reminder, we changed the MAF, we changed the crankcase breather. There was one story on the internet after a lot of searching, one video I saw, somebody said the crankshaft sensor could cause this sort of behaviour, and the behaviour is shown in this video with the crank sensor being replaced as well as the glow plugs, and that fixed the rev limit at 2,500 revs. So I've given the manifold a good clean out with plenty of petrol, bit of detergent, fill it with water, give it a good shake round. If you're going to clean out the inlet manifold, it'd be a good idea to take off the manifold air pressure sensor as well. There's a bolt on the side, just holds it on, and then it just pulls off. And you can see with this one, it's very oily and actually clogged up in the central hole, so that needs a good clean out as well. I just used a bit of carb spray on cleaner, jammed it over the nozzle, with a good squirt out, and you should be able to see liquid coming out from the hole with it reasonably cleared. Some cleaning out of the ports with a toothbrush, clean as I can get it. And of course the ports into the head were pretty gunked up as well, so what I'm going to do now is run the engine for a little bit and use my steam cleaner picked up from Halford's motorist discount type shop many years ago. You can see it's for steam cleaning, quite cheap. Steam is quite good for cleaning all sorts of things out of engines, all the soot and tar, because if you've ever had a head gasket failure where water's leaked into the head, you'll notice the combustion chamber is very, very clean inside. So I'm hoping to do the same with steam, and hopefully it also won't damage the cat or anything like that. To make it a little bit quieter, I reinserted the EGI blank off kit into the exhaust, so not gassed out at the same time. Also going to use this stone glass cleaner by HG, which is a very effective dissolver of soot and tar. It works very well on wood burning stoves, so should work equally well on the engine. So I'll just spray a little bit of that through the ports at the same time. Well, after that it's a little bit cleaner, not as clean as I want it to be, but good enough for now. So next we'll reassemble the inlet manifold, put all the sensors back on again. And the next thing I did was to check the injectors and the glow plugs, which is a separate video on my channel. So that's everything reassembled. What have we done so far? We've changed all the 4 glow plugs because they'd all gone. That's why it was difficult to start. I also did some testing and stripped down and cleaned the diesel fuel injectors, these things here. So I had a good service, oil change, oil filter change, air filter change, and also changed the fuel filter and also the fuel pump. So now we're going to try and start it up, see if it makes any difference to the smoking. So after a little bit of running and going through the rev range, about 5 minutes of running or so, miraculously all of the smoke has now disappeared. Whereas previously at the back we had big clouds of white smoke coming out, anything more than idle speed when you put your foot down. Now if we start it up, you can see that if I just look around the back and give it some revs, And we can see we've got no smoke at all. So that's it. Job done, no smoke. So if your diesel car is smoky, this is particularly a Freelander one, those are the steps to go through and fix it. I think probably in the end it was a combination of the crankshaft sensor, the EGR, not the EGR, the crankcase filter that was clogged up, and also I think the injectors could do with a bit of a clean out, which is what we've done. So doing all those things seems to have fixed it. I also did give it a good service, changed the fuel filter, the air filter, oil and so on, and also changed the low pressure fuel pump, because I managed to pick one up for 20 quid. So I thought the smoking was fixed, but actually the next day at around the 2,000-2,500 rev mark it was still smoking. So on to the next level of diagnosis. So it occurs to me as two possible reasons for this. White smoke being caused by excess diesel, which could be not enough air, or it could be the diesel fuel not atomizing correctly. And one thing that is worth quickly checking is the voltage reading on the output of the high pressure fuel line sensor. So the fuel line sensor is, let's just put the flash on, is down here where my finger is pointing, and the original, I've actually got a Synergy fuel mapping box on it at the moment, but the original connector is the blue and black wire down there that my probe is on. I've just peeled the insulation back, stuck a probe through the middle of the wires. The other end goes on the battery negative, and then the voltage readings that you should get is with ignition on it's about half a volt, with engine idling it's 1.28 volts, and with 3,000 revs, according to somebody on the internet on a good engine, it should be 1.96 volts. So on this engine it's only 1.41 volts. So that's a little bit indicative. If the voltage is not going up enough, it means the fuel pressure is not going up enough. So possibly it's a problem with the high pressure fuel pump, or the regulator on the pressure pump, which is a bit of a known weakness. Apparently it's down there somewhere. And there is a separate video on my channel showing how to fix that high pressure fuel pump regulator. So with it all reassembled, getting the correct voltages on the high pressure rail, idle speed, no smoke. Revving up through the range, there's no smoke. We hold it around 2.5. Seems to start running worse and worse, and then start smoking again. Above 3,000. Interestingly, above 3,000 there is no smoke. They still have a running problem around 2,500 revs. The other thing that I've noticed is the turbo actuator, which, so you can see the turbo from underneath the car. It's at the back of the engine down there, and the actuator is vacuum operated from, or via, a little solenoid valve, and the vacuum comes from this vacuum line here, goes to a little control valve. And I've noticed if that pipe is connected direct to the actuator on the turbo, then the lever on the actuator to the turbo moves a lot more than if it's going via the solenoid switch. Now maybe it's meant to be like that, but that might be worth investigating as well. Check out this video on my channel for testing and stripping down and fixing the turbo boost control solenoid. So this is with the vacuum pipe connected directly to the turbo actuator, and it's interesting that there seems to be noticeably less smoke at 2,000 RPM. Let's put it to 2,000. 2,000 is there. Not really very much smoke or anything at all coming out the back, and 2,500. Again, not very much, or virtually no smoke coming out. So obviously with the actuator connected to the vacuum all of the time, there's more air going into the engine, which is allowing for fuller combustion, which is cutting down on the amount of smoke. So maybe there's a problem with the manifold air pressure sensor, which is incorrectly turning off the solenoid for the turbo actuator. So next thing to look at. See the separate video on my channel for testing the manifold air pressure or absolute pressure sensor. So the map sensor turned out to be working fine, and the only real problem is just there's a little bit of smoke around the 2,500 revs mark. Most people would be happy just to leave the car as it is. Most of the time, vast majority of the time, it's not smoking. I'd still quite like to get rid of that smoke around that particular rev point. So I then progressed on to taking direct control over the turbo boost with a simple turbo boost control circuit that I built up, which we'll detail next. So next, see this video on my channel for making a simple boost controller for enabling more air into the engine, which removes that final bit of smoke at 2,500 RPM. Because as you saw, the solution to removing that smoke at 2,500 revs is to get the turbo to pump more air into the engine. What's actually causing this? It's a little bit difficult to say. We've certainly gone through everything on the engine and diagnosed and fixed all of the faults that it had. What I suspect is happening is that the engine is a little bit clogged up with carbon still, because we haven't stripped down the engine or the manifolds. So pumping more air into the engine by increasing the boost is compensating for the slight lack of flow through the ports and into the engine. Quite a few owners I've seen are reporting smoke around 2,500 RPM just when it's idling. Probably it's caused by the engines clogging up as they get a bit older. So that's this Freelander all fixed. It's running as sweet as a nut. No smoke at the back like there was previously. Just been MOT'd, and the MOT guy said about emissions that it was as clean as a nut, which is good. Job done, no smoke. So if your diesel car is smoky, this is particularly a Freelander one, those are the steps to go through and fix it. Thanks for watching. Cheers, bye.